Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 159 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at _. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Don't have the new studio set up in my new place here yet, so I just got blaring light blaring in through the background. But if you can see me, I'm repping the best team in baseball. Feeling good about that. But this is one of my favorite exercises that we do all year, this pod that me and Shane do, the all Under-25 team draft. That's what we're doing today, and I can't wait to get into it. I've been nerding out over rankings all morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to be drafting under 25-year-old teams. We're going to draft an offense and a defense. We're going to draft towards 11 personnel and nickel defense. So you're not going to see two tight ends on the roster for each of us. It's just the NFL's moving towards 11 personnel. That's what we wanted to do. So I've got a little spreadsheet set up here. We are going to snake draft it. The ground rules are basically the players have to be under 25 week one of this season. So that ages out some guys like Creed Humphrey and Micah Parsons that'll turn 25 this summer. They have to be under 25 when week one happens. So, Mark, we'll go ahead and dive into it here. Do you want first pick or second pick?
I'll always take the first pick if that's an option, Shane.
All right. So there it is. Mark, you are on the clock then. First pick here. Where are you going to go?
And it's funny, I'm taking the first pick. I don't even think this is where you're going to go. So I might be wasting taking the first pick. But I'm going to take Penei Sewell at offensive tackle to lock that down. I think that's one of the weaker positions. And one of my biggest takeaways kind of throughout this ranking process was, man, these offensive line prospects who we kind of go into these drafts saying like, oh, well, these guys are pretty sure things, or, well, these guys will be able to start day one, have not necessarily graded out all that well, according to PFF and other ways that you can, read offensive line rankings. And, Penei Sewell is kind of the antithesis of that because he was a spot-on pick. I mean, he's one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. And to me, this was actually a pretty easy number one pick.
Yeah. In my notes, I typed Penei Sewell no matter what. So that's exactly where I would have gone number one overall. I think Penei Sewell to the next tackle, let alone the fact that you have to have two tackles. Yeah. That's probably the biggest gap at any position in this draft. And so it is funny as we talked about this, the number of top offensive tackle talents that we've talked about over the years. And Andrew Thomas just aged out. But some of these other guys that we've really liked, Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross, Evan Neal have struggled to start their careers, some more than others. And so I think there was a right answer for the first pick. It's kind of like the year. It's not as bad, but it's like the year that there was one quarterback and it was Justin Herbert and there was like nothing else.
Yeah.
There was a correct answer at number one. And I think you nailed it here.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that's where you would have went, because I thought maybe it was another direction and I might be wasting the first pick, but no, happy to hear that.
Yeah. So with my first pick, I'm going to go to, and that's the funny thing. Like obviously quarterback is most impactful and we may draft some positions that are least impactful, but when you're working from a limited pool of players, a lot of times it becomes about assessing that gap, that drop off. And so I'm going to go to a position that I do think is important, but I also think there's a really big drop off here. And I'm going to select defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Mm-hmm. I think, it's another one of those positions. There's not a dearth of interior offensive lineman talent in the NFL right now. And Jalen Carter is one of those guys. We saw the impact he had early in his rookie season, and he certainly faded some down the stretch, but he was such an impactful player. And we've seen guys hit that rookie wall late in the rookie season, especially linemen, but he was very good. You anticipate that he's going to build on that. And there's just not a ton of defensive line talent around the NFL that is really young on the interior. So Jalen Carter will be my first pick. And then it's tough because I look at some of these other positions, and I'm going to go to another guy that I know that you and I both love. And I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going to take a prospect that you called the best defensive player you've ever evaluated.
Yeah.
Give me Kyle Hamilton, safety from the Ravens. And similarly, I don't think there's a lot of good safeties, but Hamilton had a breakout year last year. He's so useful, so many different places. You can put him in the slot, you can put him in the box, you can put him at safety. He's got a ton of versatility. If there were a bunch of safeties I ended up liking, I would be fine moving him into the nickel for myself here. So I think Kyle Hamilton is a great guy to get on your football team. So I'll double dip defense here, and then I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I forgot you were going to go double there. So I even tacked Kyle Hamilton off the list because I thought I was going to pick him next. But no, you should go. So it makes sense. That was my number 2 and number 3 guy. Hamilton was 2, Carter was 3. Those are the correct 2 picks. So maybe honestly, I should have went second. Darn. But I have a guy who I actually have 4th, but I don't think you're going to take him with the next 2 picks. So I'm going to go double receiver, which is a shocking kind of route to go here. But I think there's a clear top 2. I'm going to go with Jamar Chase as my second pick, and he's going to be my number 1 outside receiver. And then as my 3rd pick, I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm going to play him in the slot. He plays more in the slot than he does outside anyway. So I have 2 Lions already, but going with Amon-Ra, and I feel like I now kind of dominate the receiver position while Shane dominates me on defense probably.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd have to go back and watch last year's, but I think this is almost the exact same route we ended up last year. You sprung on receiver early, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't need to draft a receiver anymore, so I'm just going to continue to stockpile defensive players. And I would have gone with a receiver here, but there almost seems to not be a need to now. There's so many good receivers, and you've got definitely the best one. I think there could be some debate around number 2 potentially, but so I'm going to stick with defense here, and I'm going to take another guy that I love, and I think if I get this guy, there's definite major drop-off moving forward at the position, and that's Javon Holland. I'm going to go ahead and take my other safety.
Wow.
And the only thing I really don't like about that is it makes it where you don't need to draft a safety at this point until the last round. So I don't necessarily like locking out a position there, but I think there's such a drop off from Hamilton to Holland to anybody else at safety.
Yeah.
So I'll go there. And then I'm going to go for a guy that this is one of those degrees of separation between number 1 and 2, because this isn't the most impactful position. There's better players on the board. But I'm going to take Tyler Smith, offensive lineman. I didn't
think you were going to take. Wow.
Is that the guy that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to take him there. So I didn't know you were that high on Tyler Smith. Yeah, if you remember, I actually defended that Dallas pick live. People kind of made fun of it. I was pretty high on Tyler Smith. He's panned out even more than I thought he could. That's exactly who I wanted. I had him 4th overall. I'm regretting not taking him big time.
Yeah, I had written down just to get Smith because there's such a drop off at guard, and he's also got tackle versatility, and there's a pretty big drop off at tackle. So I'm going to plug him in at guard for now. There's a potential I'll kick him out to tackle before we get done with this draft, though.
Man, that's tough. That's a tough beat for me. I'm going to go with a different interior offensive lineman named Tyler. I'm going to go with Tyler Linderbaum at center, which, just like you, I don't like locking you out of center. Now you get to just take I don't know, Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton later at the last round. But I'm happy to get a guy who's finished as a top 7 center in both of his years in the NFL, according to PFF. So I feel like I locked that down. And this is, I'm just going full offense. This is insane. But it's probably not the right pick because I think there are multiple quarterbacks on the board that are really good. There's a lot of talent under 25. There's going to be a quarterback who doesn't get drafted who is really darn good. But I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. We both had him listed as a top 5 quarterback. I think that I at least get the advantage of having the best quarterback in the game or whatever we're playing this out on. So I'm going full offense, man.
All right. Yeah. I really debated going like Stroud versus Lawrence versus even a guy like Caleb Williams. And that was one of those where I just ended up saying there's multiple guys and Mark can only take one of them. So I'm going to hold off for the time being, but I definitely understand the appeal to CJ Stroud, a guy that we were both very high on and both caught some flack on, I think, for where we had them ranked, but we don't have to get into defending our quarterback rankings. Go check our Twitter timelines. That's a wasteland. I'm sure everybody will have more well-reasoned, well-measured reactions to our under 25 draft than our QB rankings.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, so I don't need to take a quarterback. I don't need to take a center. Do I go with another offensive lineman here, or do I continue to wait? I think I'm going to take a cornerback. And if I say I'm going to take a cornerback, everybody should know who it's going to be. I'm going to take Sauce Gardner. You've got all of the talent that you've got at receiver. I'm going to have to defend that. And I do think corner is pretty deep, but I think Sauce Gardner is elite, whereas a lot of these other corners are really good. And so I do think there's a step there. I even made a note for myself that corner was very deep, not to draft it early. And, here we are. And I drafted it early, but I do think it makes sense given the drop off there from 1 to 2. And then I'm going to look to the trenches, and I'm going to give me Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson's a guy that I'm going to list him as a DN. By the way, if you're a little confused on the graphic here, we left open the possibility for a 3 or a 4-man front. So there's a lot of fluidity between like D end, edge, interior defensive line, and defensive line. We'll kind of set that up as we go. But for now, Aiden Hutchinson's going to be a pass rusher for me wherever that ends up being. I mean, he flashed in 2022, but he had an incredible year in 2023. If you look at PFF grades, he was 5th. He had 110 total pressures. So he had a breakout season, and he wasn't my edge one in that class, but he's lived up to that billing at this point. And so Aiden Hutchinson, you might have all the offensive weapons. We're just going to have all the defense, Mark.
That was the 2 picks that I wanted there. So it's definitely not going well for me. I'm not loving my results here. You did. The reason that I hadn't taken Sauce yet is because corner is so deep. That was one of the things that I realized going through this exercise. My first pick, I'm actually going to stay away from corner at first. And I'm going to take, because I think similarly to your taking Javon Holland, I think that the second best defensive tackle that's available, there's a pretty big gap after. So I'm going to take Aleem McNeil, another Detroit Lion, got an 86.8 a PFF grade this year. He was the number 7 defensive tackle. Really good kind of both ways, can stop the run, can rush the passer. So give me Aleem McNeil as my first defender on the board there. Then I struggle with my next pick here just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead. Do you have any take on Aleem McNeil to help me out while I look?
Yeah, I think Aleem McNeil's a good pick. I had him rated as my second interior defensive lineman, and McNeil is an interesting guy because he wasn't drafted very high. I forget, was he a day 3 guy?
I believe so. He
was third round draft pick in 2021. So he was drafted in the 3rd round, and he's just steadily gotten better year over year. And I really like him. And I do think, I mean, you can look at the board right now, and there's still some Lions that I'm sure are going to get picked in this draft. One of the things that really stuck out to me as I was ranking players on this exercise is how many Detroit Lions were on the list.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. It's definitely true. There's a ton of them. I mean, already there's been 4 off the board. I'm going to go the way that I thought I was going to go. I'm going to go to corner, and I'm going to take Patrick Surtain, who had a little bit of a down year last year. I think a lot of that might just be situation, but his first 2 years in the league, he had 6 combined picks. Graded out as the number 2 corner in 2022, graded out top 40 the other 2 years that he's been in the league. Patrick Surtain, who's like everyone's dream Eagles trade target if everything truly goes wrong in Denver. He is truly elite. He's one of the best corners. If I was, ranking corners overall, even outside of the under 25 stipulation, he'd be right there in the mix for number 2. Am I wrong there, Shane?
No, I don't think so. Patrick Surtain's really good. And you mentioned statistically, maybe not the best year last year, but again, I mean, consider the situation and
Yeah.
how long can you go on with the mess that has been Denver before the defense? I mean, we saw the defense getting in fights with Russ at the end of the 2022 season and then 2023, and you've got it's just been a mess. I think it was a struggle of the defense as a whole. I don't think it says anything about Surtain. Now, we know that cornerback play is not sticky year over year, but I think he's one of the better young defenders in the NFL, and he's who I had listed as my corner two for this exercise as well.
Yeah. So there's a couple. There's another couple that you could argue even in this exercise as maybe the number 2 corner in the NFL going forward. So we'll see if those are the next 2 off the board.
Yeah. Okay, so that puts me on the clock for a pair of picks here. You could argue that I should pick an offensive player at this point of the draft as I sit here in round 7 with only one offensive player and it being an offensive lineman. But again, you've taken your quarterback, you've taken 2 wide receivers. So I don't feel the urge to go take a running back right now. So if I look at the board here, I think one of the places there's the best value is to go ahead and snag Will Anderson to be my other edge rusher. And again, I don't love locking you out of a position here because it allows you to just kick that can down the road. But you look at what Will Anderson did last year, and he had the ankle injury, but he's defensive rookie of the year. He had a 16.7% pressure rate. That was top among all rookie edge defenders in the last 4 years. I just think he's such a good player. He's going to only be entering his second year. If I can put him across from Aiden Hutchinson to rush the passer, I think that's a dynamic pass rushing duo. There's still some good guys out here. There's one in particular that's a good player under 25, and then you can kind of take picks from the rookies. But I'm always a little hesitant to pick rookies in these exercises. So Will Anderson Jr. is my first pick. And then for my second pick, I'm going to go to one of those positions where I just think there's a gap. It's not the most important position, but there's a gap here. And I'm going to take Nick Bolton, linebacker from Kansas City, to be my linebacker. As I looked at linebackers, I just didn't like anything, to be honest. There is an absolute wasteland when it comes to linebacker talent in the NFL. Patrick Queen just aged out of this exercise. There's not a lot of good linebacker play if you remove the under 25 thing. But with under 25 being on there, it's just not been a position lately that guys step into the league and make a lot of an impact. And so give me Nick Bolton. He's proven over a couple of years that he's been a really good player in that Chiefs defense, and I'll add him to my defense.
I think you're overstating that a little bit, actually. I actually thought that I had a nice crop of linebackers here compared to some past years. Maybe we'll get into some conversations later on about that. I'm struggling here. What to do? I want 3 positions, and I've got 2 picks here. Will Anderson was my next up in terms of edge rushers, but it feels like that's a pretty deep spot too. So I'm not dying in the way that I was at some of your past picks. It seemed like you had my board beforehand for some of them.
When you're on the 159th episode of a podcast that you've done together, you start to be in each other's heads just a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And this is actually, I guess you could say this is about maybe me doing that to you, because this is a guy that you loved last year in the draft process, and you were absolutely correct. I liked him, but I wasn't in love with him like you and Dives and like many were, and he ended up creeping up. I think he ended up going 5th, if I'm not mistaken, to Seattle, and it's cornerback Devin Witherspoon, who actually played slightly more in the slot, but he also graded out incredibly on the outside, about 420 slot snaps, about 380 outside snaps last year, according to PFF. So I reserved the right to kind of go draft an outside corner or a slot corner as my third corner here, which is kind of one of the benefits of Witherspoon because of his versatility. And that was, something that you guys always pointed out throughout the draft process, I think. So Witherspoon, was he your number 3 corner?
He was not, actually. He was my number 4.
Yeah, I think I know who the other one was. But there's definitely a strong argument for the other one who I think you're talking about. And with my other pick, It's just we're going all Lions, just Detroit Lions stuff. At tight end, we're taking Sam Laporta. And this is a weird one. This is kind of like the CJ Stroud pick because there's two more that you could really sell yourself on as pretty elite options for this exercise. But I do think Sam Laporta is the best one. Sam Laporta, I know, Shane, you're not a fantasy guy, so I won't bore you too much with fantasy talk. But I'm doing some early fantasy football rankings, looking at some of the sites out there and some of the early ADP. He's competing on some sites with Travis Kelce being the first tight end taken for fantasy football this year. On many sites, he's the number one tight end. So I think it's really close. It's razor thin. If you were asking me who I would pick in fantasy, I think I'd still probably lean Kelce with some of the Rashee Rice, question marks about his availability this year. But it is neck and neck. I mean, last year he had 86 catches, 889 yards, and 10 touchdowns, while Travis Kelce had 93 catches, 984 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So it's really neck and neck. It's going to be an interesting kind of fantasy football debate all offseason.
He had the 4th most receiving yards in a rookie season by a tight end in NFL history. Can you guess the guys that are ahead of him on the list?
Wow. When you said that, I'm actually really surprised he's 4th. I think Kyle Pitts went 1,000 his rookie year, right?
He did 1,026. Pitts is 2nd on the list.
Is Ditka on there?
Ditka was 1st.
3rd. This is Kellen Winslow.
No,
I don't know.
He was a rookie in 2002. Played in the NFC East.
Shockey?
Yeah, Jeremy Shockey had 5 more yards than Laporta did.
Wow, I'm actually surprised at the 889. I'm shocked. I guess Pitts had 1,000, so I shouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I actually thought Laporta. I had in my head until I looked it up that Laporta was 2nd, only to Kyle Pitts, but I didn't realize that Shockey and Ditka. Well, I wouldn't have thought of Ditka probably because that's way before my time, but I didn't realize Shockey was up there.
I think the only reason I know Ditka is because people were bringing it up when Pitts was a rookie. And when Pitts was close to breaking the record, but he didn't. So I think that's the only reason I know about Ditka. But yeah, by the way, this is an aside, but I'm buying all the way in on the Kyle Pitts revenge tour yet again. I am just a fool.
So you're buying in on the Kyle Pitts revenge tour, but you drafted Sam Laporta?
Well, he's not under 25, is he?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even know if I checked that.
Yeah, Pitts is only 23.
Wow, that's shocking. I mean, that is legitimately shocking, actually. But anyway, I think I was saying more from like a value in fantasy standpoint, where he's being drafted as like tight end 8 or 9, and I think he could end up being like a top 5 tight end this year. Sam Laporta's being drafted as tight end 1, so I still feel good about that. I'm trying to think because I have 2 more tight ends in mind that were right there behind Laporta. I'm trying to think if I think Pitts is even better than them. It's tough. Tight end's pretty loaded. This is probably a bad pick.
I did have, for what it's worth, I had Laporta as my tight end 1. I had Pitts just slightly behind him at tight end 2.
So that's, I mean, you'll end up with Pitts there. So I'll say this out loud. Trey McBride is like tight end 3 on most fantasy rankings this year. He was unreal down the stretch last year, especially once they got rid of Ertz and stopped playing Ertz at all. He was really good. And then Brock Bowers is also like the mystery box guy, but we've both said he's the best tight end we've ever evaluated from a draft standpoint. So you have to give him some credit of mentioning him. And I'll throw Dalton Kincaid out there too. Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid is who I had at 3.
Wow. Okay.
For McBride, I felt like McBride is a little more of a product of like his stats were a little more of a product of Kyler having nobody else to throw the football to.
See, I kind of felt like that about Kincaid with Allen and just him having Josh Allen, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Stephon Diggs was there, Khalil Shakir, but yeah, he was a big target. And then who was the other one you said? Oh, Bowers. Yeah, I didn't really consider Bowers. I mean, we all know rookie tight ends in terms of like product, which I guess the exercise isn't the best fantasy team. It's the best players. So maybe I should have considered Brock Bowers on my list, regardless of what I think his production might be as a rookie. But I didn't have him on my list.
And that was honestly like why I considered Bowers, because of how good of a blocker I think he is. And that was also a little bit of a point of contention in the draft process. You weren't quite as gung-ho on his blocking as I was.
I said he was a good blocker.
No, but I think I went like overboard, and you kind of corrected me, or not corrected me, but you chimed in and were like, I have some concerns here. I honestly, we did, I don't know how many hours of draft coverage. I don't remember the exact conversation, but I do remember you were like a little bit more concerned than I was about some of the inline blocking.
I said he had average strength as a blocker.
Yeah, I think maybe you said that, and I was like, really average? And I think that was where we had a back and forth.
Yeah. I had to go pull up my scouting report to see what I wrote. I couldn't remember.
But
I've flushed the draft away. It's locked away in the recesses of my brain now.
It's funny. So to let people behind the curtain, last year we did 2 tight ends.
We did.
And we were talking about that before, and we got rid of 2 positions. We got rid of a tight end and a linebacker. And I thought like, oh, okay. It actually makes it more interesting because to me, when I was going through it, I forgot about Pitts. I was like, oh, Laporta, Kincaid, McBride, and Bowers. Like those are the obvious 4. There's nobody like I was looking through. I just didn't even think to click on Pitts because he's been around for so long in my life. I feel like I didn't even think he could possibly be under 25. He's apparently like 23. But I was looking through it and I was like, this actually makes it more interesting to limit it to 1 tight end because it makes us pick. But now there would have been 5, so we would have still had the pick.
We still would have had the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that puts me back on the clock here. And I really don't know which direction I want to go at this point. I could take another cornerback. I don't really need to do that, though. I feel like the top corners are gone, and it's so deep at corner at this point. I don't know that I need to go corner. There's not really another defensive lineman that I love. So I guess I start looking at the offensive side of the ball here. And I don't need to take my quarterback or my tight end. So do I go wide receiver, running back, or offensive line? Let's go. Yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to go for my other offensive guard here, which, again, I don't love that this locks you out of a position, but I'll take Peter Skoronski. Now, Peter Skoronski didn't grade out the best if you look at like the PFF grades as a rookie. It wasn't bad, but he didn't grade out great. But you got to remember, this is a guy that was changing positions while he was moving to the NFL. I think Skoronski is still a top talent. We always kind of thought he would probably kick into guard, although I thought he'd have a chance to stick at tackle. But I think that's the biggest drop off from Skoronski to the next offensive guard versus the other offensive line positions that are out here. And so I'll go that for my first pick. And then for my second pick, I think I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get my other linebacker. So I had 2 linebackers that were kind of tiered out ahead of the rest of the pack. And so I'll take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah here, a guy that we both loved in the draft that's played a lot of roles over the years for the Browns, but give me Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker.
That was my next pick. So that's brutal there from Shane to sneak him in there. That's my guy. Getting way too many Notre Dame Fighting Irishmen on Shane's team. It's disrespectful. I'm going to go with who I think Shane's cornerback 3 is. So I'm going to lock Shane out of a position, which is maybe stupid to do, but whatever. I'm going to go with Trent McDuffie as my third corner, and that locks him in the slot. I'll play Witherspoon on the outside. I feel like I'm pretty elite, at all 3 spots there. I didn't get Sauce, but I got my number 2, 3, and 4. Was he your number 3?
He was my number 6.
Okay, then I'm
totally kidding. He was my number 3.
Okay. No, because there's more. There
are some good guys, but yeah, McDuffie was my number 3. I loved McDuffie in the draft, and I remember saying that I didn't think that Trent McDuffie was I didn't think he had to be a slot player at the next level, and he's pretty much been a slot player. I mean, he's moved around a little bit for the Chiefs. He hasn't really got the chance to just like stick at outside cornerback beyond real early in his rookie season. And I still think he could, but he's been so elite in the slot. You just don't mess with it at this point. So he may be a guy that just sticks in the slot his whole career at this point, but he's really good at it. He was my corner 3.
And yeah, so that makes me happy. I did make a good pick there then. I'm going to stay away from receiver. I was looking at 3 receivers, and I feel like I'd be happy with any of the 3 of them. So I'm going to go with the first. You haven't taken a rookie yet, right? I know Shane hates when I take rookies.
I have not taken a rookie.
But I'm going to take a guy that Shane likes even more than I do. And maybe this is because I'm getting upset about all the Notre Dame Fighting Irishmen going off the board here. But I'm going to take Joe Alt. I'm going to lock down Joe Alt on the other side of the line from Penei Sewell. So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, Joe Alt would have. I had thought about taking him at this point because I did have a good size drop off between him and where we go next at tackle. So that one hurts me a little bit. Actually, both of those hurt me a little bit, but and now you're locked out of both of those positions. So I guess it'll be a while before I go there.
Yeah. So I feel pretty good about that one.
Okay. So I don't need to go corner. I don't need to go tight end. I don't need to go offensive line because we're all alternate spots here on the offensive line. I don't need to go quarterback. So I can pretty much go running back, wide receiver, or defensive line. So running back, wide receiver, defensive line. I'm going to go my first pick. I will take, I don't know, man. This one, it's tough now. It's really, so this has a different dynamic than last year because last year Dives did this draft with us. Yes. So there was a lot less of like, oh, this position, I'm the only one that can select now. I think I'm going to go for wide receiver here. I'll take my first wide receiver. Give me Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson has had a really good start to his career, despite the fact he's had really bad quarterback play. And, last year it was supposed to be better with Aaron Rodgers, and you got Aaron Rodgers for 4 snaps, and that really sucks. But when you look at what Garrett Wilson has been able to do, especially with Zach Wilson being his primary quarterback, he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And I'm really impressed with him as a player. And if I recall correctly, I was not that high on Wilson in the draft. I think he was my wide receiver 5 in that draft. And so he's really outplayed that. Maybe I'm overcompensating a bit because of how high up, like I've vaulted him now, but I'll take him as a wide receiver. And I think I'll go ahead and do I take a running back or a wide receiver here? I'm going to take a running back. I'm going to take Bijan Robinson. I think there's an argument for which running back should go first here, but the way that I evaluated Bijan Robinson coming out in the draft, I thought he was a really good prospect. I thought he shouldn't have gone 8 to the Falcons, but I thought he should have been a top 15 pick. I think we all know the Falcons have been a disaster organization. Their coach was a disaster. The quarterback was a disaster. I still think Robinson's a really talented player, and so I'll take Robinson here. And the quarterback I'm going to draft in a few rounds will be better than Desmond Ridder. We'll say that.
I'm struggling here. Which way to go? I'm going to go ahead and I don't know, never mind. Why would I do that? I'm locked out of that position. That's where we're at in the draft now. I'm like looking at like how many positions am I not locked out of? I'm going to go with a receiver. I'm a little bit lower on Garrett Wilson than I think consensus. If we were doing like top 10 receiver rankings, I know he's been unbelievable in a bad situation. I do think when it comes to these like elite guys he's being mentioned with, I think I just have to see an elite year of production before I'm willing to kind of vault him up there. He's been very good, obviously, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of go with a guy who's a mystery box again, obviously, but again, another guy who I called the best player I've ever evaluated a position. I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. As my second outside guy. And I think having Jamar on the outside and Amon-Ra on the inside will open up a lot.
All right. So that locks me out of wide receiver.
I think I'm locked out of I think there's nothing that I can pick that you haven't locked me out of now.
Defensive line. There's a defensive line spot we share in common. So I'll make that as one of my picks here. I had one guy ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., but I felt stupid taking him with Marvin Harrison Jr. still on the board. So I was going to wait and see if you picked him first. So I'll take the other guy. The guy that I had ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. was Puka Nacua. He had such a good rookie season. He proved himself to be such a good route runner. And, we can say that, well, he was playing in an offense that didn't have a whole lot. Cooper Kupp started the year injured and things like that. But Puka Nacua continued to perform after Cooper Kupp came back. Like, he earned Matthew Stafford's trust. He didn't fall off the planet. And he continued to put up 100-yard games and things as the season went on. So I don't think it was just he's got a really good quarterback with nobody else to throw to. I think he proved there's enough room in that offense for him and Cooper Kupp, and that in some aspects, he could be trending down an elite career path as well. So obviously it's one season and it came out of nowhere. And that's why it feels dumb to take him over Marvin Harrison Jr., but I did have him slightly above Marvin Harrison Jr. I just couldn't bring myself. It felt good when I put it on paper. I just couldn't bring myself to do it once I was on the clock.
I think I messed up and only made one pick last time.
Did you?
I can't remember if I made a second pick.
This
is the first.
Yeah,
you have 13 picks. I have quick math. I have 12. Yeah, so I think I need to make another pick, and then you can make the next pick.
Okay. Yeah. Wait, because you had first pick, so my pick should be in multiples of 2. You should end on odd numbers. So yeah, you should have 13 before it was my turn.
And to be fair, I won't take a defensive tackle because you already said that, and I messed up anyway. So I'll just take the safety, one of the safeties that I have to take, and I think it's very much the clear number 3, and it's a guy that I actually really loved in the draft, and then I didn't realize how great of a season he had last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. Jordan Battle from Alabama, who's a guy that I loved. He went in the 3rd round. I praised the Bengals for that pick. 76.4 coverage grade, 81.3 run defense grade, graded out as the number 8 safety. And he played a little bit in the box, played a little bit of free safety, pretty versatile there. So I didn't realize, man, Jordan Battle, what a rookie season.
Yeah, easy for things to get lost in the shuffle with all the storylines around Cincinnati last year with Burrow's calf injury and then getting injured for real, and then Jake Browning coming in. Like, there's a lot of storylines in Cincinnati. Like, the defense regressing, but Jordan Battle did have a good season for sure.
Yeah. So you can go ahead and take the defensive tackle. That's my bad. I apologize to the listeners.
Okay, well, I probably could have let you take a defensive tackle because I'm really up in the air on which defensive tackle I want to take. There's 3 guys that I think you could make legitimate arguments for here. Do you want to? Well, no, I won't ask you to guess who they are. But there's 2 that I'm trying to.
Guys.
Huh?
I also have 3 guys.
All right. I bet we'll see after I make the pick if it's the same 3. I'm trying to balance a rookie that I had ranked pretty highly versus another guy that I had ranked really highly when he came out in the draft. And there's been a lot of discourse on Twitter about this guy lately. And at the end of the day, I had him ranked higher than I have this year's rookie. And so I'm going to stick with that evaluation. I'm going to take Jordan Davis. So Jordan Davis is going to be my second rookie, or my second defensive lineman here. He's going to play next to his teammate, Jalen Carter. Maybe we get that chemistry boost here. I guess I should hope not, though, as many Lions as you have. But so for me, it was between Jordan Davis, Jerzan Newton, rookie, and then Keanu Benton. Those were the 3 defensive linemen I sort of had listed out there. Are those the same guys you had?
I didn't have Jordan Davis. I had Keanu Benton. I had Jerzan Newton, and I had Byron Murphy. So I'll have to decide between one of those 3 now. I don't want to do the Jordan Davis thing for like the millionth time. And I think your post was pretty rational yesterday. But I don't think bust is as crazy as you do, just given the situation of trading up for him, given the situation that Kyle Hamilton went after him. I think we're coming at it from different angles, though. I'm not saying he's like a terrible football player, that he's not like average defensive tackle. But I do think that's what he is. And I know that he graded out really well in some areas in the run game. I didn't think that he was able. I think he's a guy that if he's going to be so elite against the run, that's got to like be a ship that rises all tides. And I know that there was a lot of problems with the Eagles defense. I'm not trying to put that really on Jordan Davis, but I haven't seen his elite run stuffing translate to the defense being good as overall as a run stuffing team. And I think if you're going to take a guy 10th who can't rush the passer, that's what he has to be. And it has to be so impactful. But the one picture I saw of him, he looked incredibly slim at I think it was the bike event that all the Eagles were at. He looked like he was in incredible shape. Maybe if he got really slimmed down, we wouldn't see some of the exhaustion that I think sets in with him, especially in the second half of games. So I think that, I'm all for Jordan Davis having a bounce back year. Here's my problem, Shane, and I think you know where I'm going to go here. When you make that post about Jordan Davis, and I know you're going at kind of the people who call him fat and lazy and slow and say he's a bust and they should cut him or, whatever, morons say. But I'm actually less offended by what those morons are saying than the people commenting and saying, yeah, they made the right pick. like, oh yeah, Kyle Hamilton would have never been that good here. Yeah, I'm glad they took Jordan Davis over Kyle Hamilton. In this system, that's what you need. And it's like, all right, like that's a worse take than anything anyone on the other side had.
Yeah. I 100% would have sprinted the Kyle Hamilton card into the podium. I said it at the time.
Yeah.
And there's some coping going on with that. And I mean, sure, would Kyle Hamilton, having been in Philadelphia last year, magically made Sean Desai or Matt Patricia have the first clue how to call a defense? Probably not. So he would not have been as good in that regard. But the Ravens have used him perfectly. But that's what coaches are supposed to do. So,
and I will just whisper something. If the Eagles drafted Kyle Hamilton, they would have won the Super Bowl. Let's move on, so I don't have to think about that topic, because I truly do believe that deep down in my heart. But moving on to my next pick. We're back on track, right?
I think so, but honestly, it doesn't matter too much if we're not now, since we don't overlap. So, let's just throw it back and forth one at a time and make picks here.
All right, one at a time. Yeah, let's do it.
Since we don't have any more overlapping positions. So, who's your next pick?
I'll go with Troy Fautino. At interior offensive line, I'm going with a rookie here. Didn't really love the interior offensive line class. The other one that I'm going to name, I don't even know if they're necessarily that good. They had a fine season as a rookie, but I'll go with Troy Fautino as my first pick here at interior line.
All right. He is not. That's the first player that I didn't already have color coded ready to go.
I could see that. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you who I had, because you still have to pick another interior offensive lineman. I'll tell you who I had in a minute. Okay, well, I'll make my quarterback selection here. I'm just going to take Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you could make an argument for taking Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams gets a lot of the same height that Trevor Lawrence got coming into the league. I've seen Trevor Lawrence be really good in the league, and I've seen him be a bonehead in the league too. And we talked about that last week on our QB ranking show. We're entering year 4 now. It's time to grow up and stop making stupid mistakes. But Trevor Lawrence has a lot of skill. I like that better than the projection of a rookie coming into the league. But how close of a call was that for you? Like, if I took Stroud, how close was Lawrence Williams for you?
Really close, dead even. I would have taken Lawrence though.
Okay.
For the same reasons you said.
Yeah. All right. So that gives me my quarterback. Who do you have next here?
I'm going to go with one of my guys. You know that he's one of my guys, and he grades out incredibly well on PFF. Maybe the stats don't look as flashy as maybe I'd like them to, but I'm going with Gregory Rousseau, who's one of my favorite players in the NFL. I really get attached to these guys who I'm high on coming out of the draft when they make me look smart. He graded out as the number 13 defensive lineman this year, after the number 20 the year before, the number 28 the year before that. He's incredibly well-rounded, good, covering the run, good at rushing the passer, even though he's only had 17 sacks over 3 years. His pressures and all that stuff, his hurries are all way up there. So Greg Rousseau is a guy that that I love.
Yeah, that's a good pick. He was my edge 3 and the last non-rookie that I really considered at the position. You're right. I mean, he's just steadily gotten better over the course of his career, and he hasn't been like a workhorse guy. He's never had a really high snap count, but he's been a solid player in the reps he's had. I think that's the right pick for the third option at defensive end here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out my wide receiver room. And honestly, this one's tough. So I'm going to tell you who I have as the highest graded receiver left, but I'm not positive that that's going to be my pick. And so the highest graded receiver I have left is Chris Olave.
It's the right pick.
Is that where you? So
yeah.
Here's the reason I question Chris Olave, because I have Garrett Wilson and I have Puka Nacua. And so I've got some smaller receivers. All 3 of those guys play about a third of their snaps in the slot. So, I mean, they play.
Olave's a little more than that, I believe.
Olave is?
I think Olave's a little more than like over 50%. Maybe last year that's what it was. I could be wrong. That's what I thought I saw when I looked it up.
Let me see. I'm going to look it up here real quick.
Which is kind of why I valued Olave.
No, Olave was just 39% last year in the slot. Okay. So there's a part of me that wants to say, hey, I've got a type of receiver here. Let's go get Drake London. Let's go get a big guy, a big ball winner outside. The problem is Drake London plays like 30% of his snaps in the slot too. So if I'm not just going to get like a true X receiver, I thought about chasing like the body type that I would like to have. But I'm going to stick with Chris Olave there. But there was, and actually I had a couple other guys ahead of Drake London. I just thought about taking him for how it would mesh with my wide receiver room.
Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson worked well before.
That's true.
That worked. And they had JSN, who's a smaller receiver with them. So that worked out well with my quarterback that I have, CJ Stroud. If you wanted to chase an X receiver, the guy I would have looked at would have been Odunze, actually.
Yeah.
I think I would take Odunze over London.
So so here's how I had him ranked. Now that the top 6 receivers are the ones we picked. And then I went Jordan Addison, Rome Odunze, Drake London, Zay Flowers, George Pickens.
I didn't have Pickens. I had Rashee Rice instead of Pickens there, basically. But I had it Olave, London, or Olave, Odunze, London, Rice.
Okay, yeah. No Jordan Addison.
I would have had him right after Rice. Yeah.
I realized I was putting way too many receivers, that we only needed 6 total, but I just wanted to have anybody we might draft on there. So I started listing them out.
Yeah, no, I did that for a couple of positions for sure. Where should I go here? I'll go. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'll just go ahead and I'll take my other interior lineman, just a boring pick. Don't have much to say about it. Steve Avila. Let's move on.
All right, Steve Avila. Also not one of my guys.
Who did you have at interior line that I didn't draft?
Cole Strange and City Sal.
City Sal, I believe. I could be wrong. I thought turned 25 by the first day. I don't think it would have changed my pick anyway, but Cole Strange was so bad his rookie year. He was better last year, but I'm just going to go with Steve Avila.
Oh, yeah, you're right. City Sal does age out. So
I was looking at
Avila was the number 5 that I knocked off when I put Sal on there. So
I was looking at Stranger Avila, but yeah.
Yeah. I initially wrote down Cam Jurgens as a guy to like potentially take, and then he could be a center or a guard. But then I started thinking he's probably the center, and there's another center. I'll go ahead and just take my center here. Tyler Linderbaum
out too, by the way, Jurgens.
Does he?
Yeah.
I didn't do as good a job as checking some of these as I thought, I guess.
Well, I missed Kyle Pitts, so I were both.
August. Yeah, you're right. Well, I made the right call then, because I decided not to take him and Jackson Powers Johnson. I mean, I loved Jackson Powers Johnson in the draft. So Jackson Powers Johnson, I would definitely much rather have Tyler Linderbaum, but Tyler Linderbaum wasn't available to me because you stole him from me. So Jackson Powers Johnson is my center here.
Jackson Powers Johnson is absolutely the right pick there. No doubt about it. I'm going to go ahead and take my other safety. And I could go with Jair Brown. I could go with a couple options. I'm going to go rookie. Why not? Let's be fun. I'm taking Tyler Nubin. That's my guy. I believe in Tyler Nubin as a guy. I mean, he's like an older player, played a ton of snaps at Minnesota. I think he can step right in. We have seen, I feel like, a lot of safeties be able to step right in to the NFL and really compete at a high level.
All right, Tyler Nubin. I had Hufanga and Jair Brown as my other safeties I listed.
Hufanga aged out, but
did he really?
But Jair Brown was my other guy.
I probably.
It's good that you did this on guys that you didn't rank.
Hufanga doesn't age out. He turns 25 in February.
Maybe I saw. Okay. I thought. Okay.
But as I got towards the bottom of the list, I probably stopped checking age so carefully and was just going by draft year. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to keep going down the list here. We already talked about it, so I'll go ahead and just make the pick. But Kyle Pitts is going to be my tight end. Such a good rookie season. I think he's as good a player now, or a better player now than he was as a rookie. I think he's been in a tremendously bad situation, similar to Bijan last year. So give me Kyle Pitts to fill out my offensive weapons.
Yeah, we already did that conversation where I was shocked that, I don't think I would have went with Pitts. I think I would have went with Bowers. I don't know. I think I would have taken the chance there. I'm going to go with my one linebacker who actually graded out as the number 16 linebacker last year as a rookie. Not a guy that I loved coming out of the draft or anything like that. I think he might even been like undrafted, but Ivan Pace Jr. Stepped right in and played a ton of snaps, 641 in the box. Graded out as the number 16 linebacker. Not as good against the run, but great in coverage and pretty good at pass rushing as well. So give me Ivan Pace Jr. for my one spot. And then my other spot, I'm going to go with Ernest Jones, who the Rams kind of drafted in the mid rounds a few years ago and have really kind of turned into one of the better linebackers in football, actually. So it's kind of like last year we went into the year being like, who are these guys? But they turned a couple of them into like legitimate guys. I mean, Ernest Jones had an 86.2 run D grade, 83.1 pass rush grade. Not great in coverage, but we have Pace for that.
Yeah, Ivan Pace. I was the only guy that had him in our top 100 last year. I really liked Ivan Pace.
Did he go undrafted?
I think he. I'm not sure. Let me see. Yeah, he was a UDFA.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought I heard that.
I couldn't remember if he was like a 6th, 7th round pick or a UDFA.
Linebacker's always weird.
All right, I'll finish out my offense here with my offensive tackles. Give me Charles Cross and Ike Ekwonu. I know both of these guys I ranked really highly in their drafts. Neither of them have had like the greatest. Well, I feel like Charles Cross had a pretty good start to his career, but Ike Ekwonu, not a great start. I think it's one of those total dysfunction things around him. I still believe in them as a player. And there's really just not a lot of other tackles like we talked about, unless you want to go rookie, which is kind of scary because a lot of the rookies or a lot of the draft picks we've evaluated really highly over the years have taken some time to settle into the league. So I'll take Charles Cross and Ike Ekwonu. Was that your 3 and 4?
I did not have Ekwonu. I had Cross on there. I had like Fashanu/Fuaga as options. And then I had Braxton Jones, actually, who I know you think stinks. I was looking into it. Braxton Jones, he's graded out as like a top 30 offensive tackle each of the last 2 years. He was like a top 15 offensive tackle in 2022. I didn't realize that, but Braxton Jones, you think he stinks. He's not that bad, Shane.
I don't think he stinks.
I thought we had a thing that you thought he stunk. I thought that was a thing on a draft show.
I don't know. I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that.
I thought that happened. Maybe I'm inventing things that are happening in my brain. I don't know.
Because I feel like, hold on, let me go look at the.
While you're looking, I'll just make we'll just finish it out. I'll make my defensive line picks and you can make your corner picks. I'll go to defensive tackle and I'll take Keanu Benton, who's been such a good, so good at rushing the passer early in his career here. Really one of those like kind of hurry and pressure monsters where he only had 1 sack last year. But people loved what they saw in terms of his stuff as an interior pass rusher. And then my edge rusher that I'm going to go with, a guy who, it's funny, he graded out horribly on PFF. I don't know what the reason for that would be. It was kind of a breakout year for him nationally, at least I felt like, and he's now he's been in the league 2 years. He's won 2 Super Bowls. It's George Karlaftis at edge rusher. He had 6 sacks his rookie year. He had 10.5 sacks this year with 7 tackles for loss, 17 quarterback hits, a lot of pressures. Did not grade out well at all on PFF. I don't know who at PFF hates my man George Karlaftis. I don't know what's going on.
I thought Leatu was going to be your other D end.
It was. So when we were talking, he was number 4, and I went through it again because he was right there with Jermaine Johnson, actually, who was the other guy I was looking at from the Jets, who had a little bit of a breakout this year. That's what I was looking at, Jermaine Johnson or him. And then I went to the second page. I had to go to the 51 to 100 page on PFF to see the position grades. And Karlaftis had a really low grade last year, 10.5 sacks. Every time I watched the Chiefs defense, I walked away impressed with Karlaftis, I felt like. So me and PFF just totally far apart.
All right. Well, that puts me back up. I'm going to make my cornerback selections, and then we'll let you pick your running back and get out of here. But we hinted at how deep cornerback was all along, and I still think I'm getting really good players here, but I'll take Derek Stingley Jr. And I'll take Brian Branch. Stingley has been really good, I think, and Stingley has the misfortune of being drafted the pick before Sauce Gardner. And, of course, he played in a really bad system. He played in a Tampa 2 system when he should be more of a man cover corner as a rookie. But he had some injuries in 2023, but D'Amico Ryans got a lot more out of him. So I really like Derek Stingley. I think he's going to be really good with D'Amico. And then you look at a guy like Brian Branch. And, I mean, if we're just talking about versatility, and I've got Javon Holland, right? And I've got Kyle Hamilton. And maybe this is a little bit overkill in terms of versatility, but I think Brian Branch is probably the best cornerback left on the board. And he played a lot in the slot. Javon Holland plays a decent amount in the slot or the box. Kyle Hamilton moves around everywhere. Brian Branch we can use in a plethora of ways. And so my defensive coordinator, all creativity is going to be open to him. So Brian Branch, Kyle Hamilton, Javon Holland, that's a really fun backfield to work with.
Yeah, no, that's really that's Stingley's the right pick there for sure. Branch I had number 8 among corners, but for the reasons you gave, and he can kind of be the slot guy with Sauce and Stingley, it makes a lot of sense. I had AJ Terrell and Asante Jr. above him, but barely above him. So those were the other guys that I had. I also had McCreary and Greg Newsome listed out. But
AJ Terrell's too old.
Oh, okay. I messed that one up.
I had J.C. Horn and Christian Gonzalez also in contention.
I didn't even think about Christian Gonzalez. That's a good one, actually.
I almost forgot about him because he got hurt so early. But
yeah. So funny enough, I have 2 running backs listed here. I think I might be making the wrong choice. I don't care. Jahmyr Gibbs might be the right pick. I'm going with Kyren Williams. I don't care. I'm going with my guy, another Notre Dame guy. Got to get him on the roster. I think people don't realize how insane what he was doing down the stretch was. Let me just read people his fantasy points for the stretch. Of course, this is. I totally lost this screen that I was on here. Oh, there we go. His last when he came back from injury, he comes back in week 12. He had 16 carries for 143 yards, 6 catches for 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Week after that, 88 yards, 3 catches, 20 points, 114 yards, 152 yards, and a touchdown, 104 yards and a touchdown, 87 yards and 3 touchdowns. He averaged like 26 fantasy points per game during the last 6 weeks of the season, winning people fantasy championships in his last week in week 17, including me. That's why we got that was a long drink of water to get to the trophy right here. So Kyren Williams, last pick here, but first in my heart.
All right. I really wanted you to take Jahmyr Gibbs, just mad for the complete Detroit Lion takeover on your offense, and B, so when we tweet this out, all the Lions fans that hate you for saying Jahmyr Gibbs was a bad draft pick last year would be like, but you put him on your team.
I'd be like, I drafted him last, though.
Yeah, he was the last pick in the 22nd round.
Exactly.
So there you have it. Our teams. Mark's offense is quarterbacked by C.J. Stroud with Kyren Williams at running back, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver, Sam Laporta tight end, and an offensive line of Penei Sewell, Troy Fountaino, Tyler Linderbaum, Steve Avila, and Joe Alt. My offense is quarterbacked by Trevor Lawrence with running back Bijan Robinson, wide receivers Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua, Chris Olave, tight end Kyle Pitts, and then an offensive line of Akeem Ekwonu, Tyler Smith, Jackson Powers Johnson, Peter Skoronski, and Charles Cross. On the defensive side, Mark is anchored up front by Gregory Rousseau, Aleem McNeil, Keanu Benton, and George Karlaftis, with linebackers Ivan Pace Jr. and Ernest Jones, and a secondary of Patrick Surtain, Devon Witherspoon, Trent McDuffie, Jordan Battle, and Tyler Newbin. I am anchored up front on defense by Aiden Hutchinson, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Will Anderson, with linebackers Nick Bolton and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and defensive backs Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley Jr., Brian Branch, Kyle Hamilton, and Javon Holland. So there you have it, guys. Our all under 25 team drafts. We'll put up a poll on Twitter and let you guys vote on who you think has the best team. Mark, as we bring this exercise to a close, anything that surprised you as we went through the draft here, anything that sticks out to you, or just general strengths and weaknesses of your team? What are your thoughts on the draft?
I think these are even teams. It's like offense versus defense a little bit. I think I definitely have the nod on offense. I think you definitely have the nod on defense. But I think that they're both pretty good. I think these are the best teams we've drafted, I feel like, in the last couple of years of this exercise. I feel like there's usually obvious kind of weaknesses. And yeah, Steve Avila is not that good. Might be a little earlier, premature for Keanu Benton, but I had him ranked over Davis anyway. So Karlaftis graded out badly on PFF, but he had 10.5 sacks. Like, my linebackers aren't great, but they both were like top 20 last year, according to PFF. So there's obvious, like, I don't think there's as many obvious holes as there kind of usually is going through this exercise. But like you said, we did it with 3 people last year, so that changes it a little bit as well. Yeah,
I think if my team wins this game, it's all about our pass rush, because we've got a really good pass rush, and we've got 2 linebackers that can blitz, and you've got 2 rookies and Steve Avila on the O-line. And we better pray that pass rush gets home, because Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is a heck of a wide receiver trio.
At least I have the elite, like the 2 elite offensive linemen there with Sewell and Linderbaum. So it's like you just hope that the other guys can kind of plug and play. And Alt, obviously, you're super high. I think you'd be really surprised if Alt wasn't like a day one, pretty at least average starter. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, Alt would have been my OT2 in this exercise. That's who I would have taken above Cross.
What pick did I make that upset you the most? I think the pick you made that upset me the most was Tyler Smith, because I didn't think you were going to go with Tyler Smith there.
It's probably Joe Alt. I think it's either Joe Alt or Tyler Linderbaum, but I like Jackson Powers Johnson a lot more than I like Charles Cross to fill that spot.
Yeah, I agree.
So the other thing that just really stuck out to me is how many Detroit Lions were on this list. Just insane. They've been on a true, like, they've been on a heater when it comes to drafting. And this is all without Jahmyr Gibbs making the roster, which surprised me. I thought Jahmyr Gibbs would be the other running back. If I would have known you were going to take Kyron Williams, I would have held off on Bijan Robinson, because I was real close between Robinson.
I would have taken Bijan.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it. Mark, before we get out of here, any final thoughts that you want to fire off?
No. Go check out the Tough Call Radio Show every Saturday. Fox Sports The Gambler.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for episode number 159 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you stream your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHalfNFL. You can follow Mark at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys next time.